Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to be with you this afternoon. My name is Laura Pereira, and I'm a researcher at the Centre for Food Policy at City University in London. And today I'm going to talk to you about imagining a better future food system. And this is going to set the scene for a lot of the more interactive work that we're going to be doing over the course of the afternoon. And this is really to introduce the concept of starting from seed ideas to really grow the future that we want. So before we start, I really just want you to close your eyes and take some time to just think about what a more desirable food system could look like. So put yourself into the near future in 5-10 years time and just imagine what you would be seeing in an improved food system. Are you in an urban area? Are you in a rural area? Are there farms around you? Are you potentially in a restaurant? What is the kind of food that you will be eating? What can you taste? What can you smell around you? These kinds of experiential moments, we don't often take the time really to appreciate, but they're really important when we actually start to do the work towards trying to get to a better place in the future and an improved food system. So unfortunately now I'm going to bring you back to reality. You can open your eyes. And when we look around ourselves at the continuation of current trends, unfortunately, these are not likely to lead us towards these better futures. We have the stark implications of climate change affecting our agricultural production. At the same time, we have the health implications of increasing obesity, the availability of fast food and junk foods that's really affecting the health of our populations. And so there's a term that we use called the Anthropocene, which is going to come up during my talk. So I just wanted to introduce it here. And it really is encapsulates a lot of the current concerns that we face together as a planet at the moment. And in essence, the Anthropocene is a new geological era where human activity is a dominant force that's actually shaping ecosystems at global scales. So you can see on the left-hand side, sort of going through all of the previous geological eras, and there's the Anthropocene at the top, which is fundamentally about the things that we do as humans to the planet, whether it's our energy system or even our food system. That's quite complicit in this idea of the Anthropocene. And so if we continue with the current trends and sort of all of these narratives or these stories that we have around what could really start to go wrong if we continue in the current direction, yeah, we may actually land up getting there. And I really like this quote by Lao Tzu, is that if you don't change direction, you're actually going to land up where you're heading. And so the real question is, how do we actually think about a different trajectory, about going towards a different place where we can actually think about the kinds of transformations or transformative changes that need to take place in order for us to actually get to the kind of futures that we were imagining or envisioning a couple of moments ago. And so this is where this project called Seeds of Good Anthropocenes comes in, and I will share a link to this project at the end if you're interested. But this project came together when it was increasingly clear that the current trajectory that we're on actually is unsustainable. But we actually don't have a very clear sense of what an attractive or viable alternative future could be. We have a very good sense of what the problems are and the issues that we currently have, but it's really difficult to think about a really transformed future. And so this project was aimed to sort of explore and start developing a narrative around what potentially good Anthropocenes might actually look like. And so this sort of forces us to think about this idea of transformation, which is also not that easy to think about. So if you imagine being in a medieval European village, and you think about the kinds of massive changes that had to take place in order to get to industrial Europe through the Industrial Revolution, those are pretty fundamental changes. It would have been very difficult to envision an industrialized era from sort of sitting within that medieval village. And yet those are the kinds of transformed futures that we really need to start thinking about if we're actually to grapple with this idea of sustainability. It talks about fundamental shifts in our underlying worldviews and our assumptions and even the values that we use to inform our choices within society. And so the Seeds of Good Anthropocene project is really trying to look at and identify the seeds of those futures that are currently present. So the seeds of the Industrial Revolution were already present in medieval Europe. And it's about trying to identify those and to see whether we can actually grow them into thinking about these better futures. And so sort of why are we focusing on seeds? It's to really help us imagine these radically different futures that are actually embedded in things that are happening right now. And we've already explored some of those seeds in this morning's workshop, actually, where we were being able to discuss all of the interesting things that are currently happening around the food system. And these small seeds or experiments are actually present long before the radical change occurs. And so if we can actually identify what these are, they can really help us chart a path towards a future food system that we'd actually be really keen to be involved in building. And so it's clear that actually the world is rife with experiments or sort of these ideas of pockets of the future that are actually in the present, and even pockets of the past that are in the present. So the idea of thinking about these seeds doesn't have to just be technological advances, but can also include thinking about indigenous knowledge or ways that we've sort of culturally done things in the past that we still want to hold on to and take with us into the future. And I think this is particularly important from a food systems perspective. And so the world is full of these experiments. The Seeds Project has actually identified a lot of them, and we're going to identify some more of them this afternoon during the workshop, just to actually give us hope that the future is not necessarily as bleak as a lot of the models tell us, and that we do actually have agency to change and to work towards a better future. So a seed, by definition, is very broad. It can be a way of thinking or doing, an institution or a technology, but it needs to exist at least partially or in prototype form. So it can't just be a figment of our imagination. It needs to be real, but it needs to be marginal, not just sort of part of the dominant way of doing things or part of the mainstream. It needs to be something that really is a seed, not yet a full forest. And that according to someone, this seed should be able to contribute to a more positive future, that there's something desirable about what the seed is doing that can help us actually achieve the kinds of more desirable futures that we're aiming towards. And so a few examples, I've got three here. The first is Centre Paul Roulant, which is based in Montreal, Canada, and there are three main components to the seed. The first is the Meals on Wheels initiative, where the youth actually volunteers to cook meals and hand them over to senior citizens. The second component is about agriculture. They have organic urban farms and a peri-urban farm, and they sell the produce weekly at a farmer's market that's actually sort of a subscription-based system or community-supported agriculture, that's the CSA. And then they also are a platform for other kinds of collectives. So they support bike repair and beekeeping. Some people are cultivating edible fungi. And so they also have become a holding place for a lot of community initiatives. Something very different is then urban office farming as another kind of seed. The particular example we have is actually from Tokyo and Persona headquarters, which is a 9-story corporate building in downtown Tokyo. And actually a fifth of its space is actually used for high intensive urban farming. And this started off as an experiment to try and provide a more beautiful workspace for people that can also promote their productivity, their mental health, and their social interaction. And although they'd initially planned to create agricultural jobs, after operating the building, it's actually developed a spin-off urban agriculture company, which is really quite interesting. And then the final seed is Kotisi Nabanya, which is from my home country of South Africa. And this seed was started actually by a set of squatters who were living on abandoned military land in Cape Town. And they formed a non-profit urban agriculture organization on the slopes of Signal Hill, which is actually one of the richest areas in Cape Town. And so they sell the produce from this farm at a market every weekend to some of these wealthy clients to be able to sort of build a stronger connection between the different groups of society within Cape Town. And they seek to promote food security and sustainable livelihoods, as well as creating employment for people. So those are three just examples of some seeds. And as I said, you've discussed some earlier this afternoon, earlier this morning, and you will do so later this afternoon. And what we're going to do is use this framework, which is called the 3 horizons, for actually thinking about how these seeds that you can see in the bottom left-hand corner can actually grow along the blue line to become the more positive, desirable futures for the food system that we can imagine in the further future. So that's the main component of what we're going to be doing. But don't worry, we're also going to be focusing on this, what is called the first horizon, this red idea, which is the current system, and really thinking about what is problematic about that we also need to change in order to enable for the seeds to grow and flourish into this more desirable future. So this is the main framework that we're going to be using. But each step will be explained to you at each point, so don't worry about it. I just wanted to give you an overall sort of framing for how this has been done. And we've used this framework in a variety of different projects over the years, through the Seeds project and a variety of other ones, to work with people to actually help them to co-design their more desirable future food system. And I wanted to end, this is my final slide, and this quote by Alex Evans that talks about how stories are powerful things because they create our reality as much as they explain it. And I think it's really powerful to understand that if the stories we reach for when everything seems to be coming apart are around themes of disaster and breakdown and that offer no hope of making it over the chasm to safety, then it's much more likely that we might actually find ourselves confronting this scenario. But if, on the other hand, we have stories and visions and signs, or these pockets of the future in the present that are positive and inspiring and purposeful, these could actually have the power to help us drive a different and much more hopeful kind of transformation in the future. And I think that it's really about working together to build some of these stories about what the future of the food system could actually look like, that will hopefully inspire us to be able to make the changes that we need. Thank you so much.